From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now, or learn the stuff they don't want you to know.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They call me Ben. We are joined, as always, with our super producer, Alexis, codename Doc Holliday Jackson. Most importantly, you are here, and that makes this the stuff they don't want you to know. It is the top of the week as we continue our march toward 2022. So much stuff is going on in the news. The trial of Ghislaine Maxwell has reached a new milestone as the court tries to pick jurors that don't seem biased, which is going to be a tall milkshake. Most interestingly, perhaps, defendants or co-defendants have been published. They include things like the Weinstein Company and Walt Disney, a lot of other people. It's available online. You can read it now. But we're holding on an update for that until we get more information and maybe see what the trial shakes loose, if it is indeed an actual trial and not a very wealthy kangaroo court. But for now, for anyone who's paying attention to news, things are looking fragile, folks. They always have been kind of a house of cards, but now we're seeing great growing unrest that was predicted in countries across the world, places like Chile, places like Eastern Europe, Central Europe, and we are also
States.
And the United States, spoiler alert, stay tuned for the entirety of this segment. We're also going to see something that's causing experts in the world of online activity to say, hey, maybe people are getting dumber. For now, maybe we open up with a story of unrest from here in the good old US of A. You guys, have you ever been in a Louis Vuitton store?
Yes, there's a really bougie mall here in Atlanta. Is it Lenox or Phipps? One of them is bougie or the other. Yeah, Phipps is the bougie one.
Because I've walked past one there.
They have a Louis Vuitton store. I think I didn't go in because it was like COVID times, and they were limiting how many people could be in there at once, but I did walk past it, and it sure looked fancy.
Yeah, our office used to be right by those two malls, which are walking distance from one another. Lenox Mall, which has by far the better food court, and Phipps Mall, which is very much for the upper class and doesn't have the best food court, which is mystifying to me. I guess the idea is that if you have the wherewithal financially to shop at a place like Phipps Plaza, then you are not the kind of person who enjoys a good greasy burger, which I feel like is an unfair stereotype. But
they do have some really expensive food over there, though.
They do. They have some unnecessarily fancy restaurants and weird themes to them as well. Maybe there's an Eyes Wide Shut kind of vibe that we just weren't getting when we were a bunch of like broke video makers. So I
think you're right.
So another store that's kind of fancy, or to some, I don't know. Is Nordstrom a fancy store? Where is it in like the hierarchy of department stores?
Medium, I think. And then there's also Nordstrom Rack, which I think is like the more like middle class facing version of Nordstrom. Maybe
Okay.
No, Nordstrom's like one of those legacy New York kind of Fifth Avenue, department store. That's how I think of it, but I'm not really sure. It's like fancier Macy's, I think.
Can I say this? I went into a Macy's to buy some clothes recently for a thing, and I didn't realize that it was all these big, expensive brands that filled Macy's when it comes to clothing. For some reason, in my mind, it was like shopping at any other, I don't know. Gosh, I just realized I don't spend enough money, maybe, on clothes. I don't know. I've never seen more expensive clothing in my life than at that Macy's. And then I was told by a friend that that's like on the cheap side. So now I just don't know what to think, guys.
Oh, did you get a suit?
I got some parts of a suit.
Nice, man. Nice. Yeah, it's strange because also the era of brick and mortar department stores has been on the decline for a while with the rise of online shopping, exacerbated by the rise of COVID. Here's what's going on. looting. Looting is happening en masse. It's not getting a ton of reporting, which is kind of odd because it is red meat for the sort of mainstream news that makes money by telling people the sky is falling and the world is ending, one way or another. Just a few days ago, this Nordstrom store in Walnut Creek, California, encountered a kind of shoplifting that had not occurred before or since, and probably wouldn't occur outside of an old school riot were it not for social media. Dozens and dozens of people, about 80 people, rushed into this store in Walnut Creek and robbed everything that wasn't tied down. One employee was pepper sprayed. 2 others were punched, kicked, subdued. All of those folks, all 3 of those folks have minor injuries, and thankfully no one was killed. But the suspects were attacking the store as an organized group, and law enforcement isn't sure how this happened. But think about this. This is cinematic. 25 cars or so blocked the street and ran interference while a crowd of almost 100 people ran into the same store. Think about how understaffed stores are now. There's no way for people to stop them. Even if you are one of the security folks and you're the best person, you're like the Captain America of department store security, you have no chance against 80 people. In fact, also, many corporations have laws that prevent these security guards from physically engaging with a shoplifter or something, right? So we have video from the scene thanks to the good efforts of Jody Hernandez. And Jody Hernandez is a journalist in the area. She found that of these 80 people who were in ski masks, who were carrying crowbars, etc., 3 managed to be arrested. And that is a terrible rate of success for law enforcement. I wanted to bring this story to everyone because it tells us some pretty fascinating things. First, it was clearly coordinated. This is crowdsourcing, like the Improv Everywhere people. Instead of doing a cutesy, seemingly spontaneous dance party, they have like gone on TikTok or Telegram or Signal or what have. Probably not Facebook, because Facebook is so hilariously compromised. Facebook is an op at this point, but they've probably been on TikTok or something like that, planning to pull this off. So we've got short staffing, we've got social media allowing for this kind of planning, and then add to that, because of concerns about supply chains, these brick and mortar stores, these physical locations, are trying to amass more inventory than they usually would have, right? So they want to get ahead of possible shortages as the holidays loom closer and closer. So this means it's the perfect time to commit a crime like this. And we're not condoning it. I don't think any of us are, but we are saying the timing couldn't have worked out better. Had you guys heard about this before we talked about it on air?
Nope.
I just heard about it looking through the news this morning. Seems pretty intense. I've heard of things kind of like this before that we've like talked about just in amongst the 3 of us, but this seems like a whole operation that you could make like a TV series about, kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. And this isn't tied to any like opportunism around like riots or unrest or anything. This is just like its own thing.
No ties to Ahmaud Arbery, no ties to the Rittenhouse decision. This did not occur in a vacuum, though, because there were other lootings the Friday night before in Union Square, another crowd attack, and other areas of San Francisco. A Louis Vuitton store got hit, a Burberry store, a jewelry store, a Walgreens, an eyeglass shop for some reason, a Bloomingdale's, and even cannabis dispensaries. And I understand there's money there, and I understand there's marijuana there, but also, as one of the employees doubtlessly said, like, think about the karma, dude. What are you doing? We're not the man. We're not the power structure. But they still got got. They got hit. And when they got rolled, the people responsible for these crimes made off for the most part. Hashtag no Bernie. What I'm saying is they got away. And this is something that I think the U.S. will see more of in the future. In response, law enforcement in the area is pledging to, quote, flood the street with cops. So there are going to be more police out there, but they're out there after the fact. And so what I first, before we get into a thought experiment, I have to mention that in San Francisco alone, overall crime is up almost 52%. Larceny and theft is up almost 88% from last year. And we know that there are two big seasons for a lot of these kinds of crimes. When the holidays are on the way and people need to get gifts or they feel social pressure to do so, and summer, when a lot of older kids are out, right? And they're out of school and they've got more free time. But with this, I propose that the three of us and you there at home have a bit of a thought experiment. And it's similar to something we had thought about several months ago, I think. Time is odd. Let's say we're planning a crime like this. We're not, to anybody in our legal department listening, but let's say we're planning a crime like this, and we crowdsource through some online forum, hopefully using proxies to hide our identities, the idea that we're going to get together, we're going to hit up FIPS, or we're going to hit up Linux, and we do so, and most of us get away, right? And then the police presence is now being increasingly prioritized in Buckhead. What have we done? Our next move, if we continue this caper, is to hit someplace far away from Buckhead, right?
Mall of Georgia, baby.
Yeah.
Disney store.
Yep. The Fort Knox of Atlanta, the Mall of Georgia. But,
yeah, it's funny you mentioned the summer situation. I can't remember if I mentioned this in the podcast before or not, but over the 4th of July weekend, I went to a get-together at our buddy Alex's girlfriend's family's place and came back and, I'd been drinking and stuff and went to play my Nintendo Switch later that night, and my controller wouldn't connect. And I all of a sudden realized, my controller won't connect because the Switch and the dock and the power supply and everything are gone. And it was the only thing that was stolen. My daughter's room was kind of rifled through, but it clearly was the kind of crime that kids on bikes looking to just kind of smash and grab or just check doors and take whatever they could carry were after. And it was a really weird feeling. I felt, especially after noticing that my kids' room had been rifled through, but nothing else was stolen. And I have a whole room, my house was full of thousands of dollars worth of equipment for recording and music and stuff, and they didn't even go in there. But clearly was a crime of opportunity.
Yeah, and conversely, or in contrast, these are crimes that are premeditated, right? Those kids may have been on bikes saying, let's see if there are any houses without cars in the driveway, right?
That's right, 100%.
Yeah.
I think the fact that it was 4th of July and they knew that a lot of people were off, traveling or at parties or something was what created the opportunity.
Mm-hmm. And in this case, what we're seeing is a incredibly effective tactic. This has been employed in other parts of the world before without social media. In fact, in Europe, I believe some segments of the population have been accused of engaging in this tactic pretty often. And it ties into, to be candid with you, it ties into discrimination against the Roma population of various countries who are said to go en masse into some kind of store that usually has 1 to 2, maybe 3 employees, and just absolutely crowd bomb it. So you can't keep track of what everybody is doing, much less stop one person amid that crowd. It's kind of like that earlier example of, could Travis Scott or could any entertainer isolate one person in a crowd of 50,000? On a smaller level. So this is a very successful strategy, which means it's going to be used again. It's also occurred in Illinois, in Oak Brook. There were people who swarmed another Louis Vuitton store. And we know that there was preparation because they came with the right kit for the job. They had garbage bags in their coats. They had their identities concealed with a balaclava or a ski mask, I guess you would call it here, and they came with the tools they needed to open the containers holding the high value stuff. What this means now is that this presents a danger, not just to you if you work at these places, not just to you if you live in the neighborhood, But it presents a danger to you if you live in these cities, because this could be also used as a pretext to further militarize the police force in your neck of the woods, which I know sounds like a distant concern. And people may say, well, this is a necessary thing. Police are supposed to stop robberies and things like this. But what happens when there is a group of 80 to 100 people who look like they could be anyone because of their disguises, and you're someone who is in the area, then you kind of become a suspect. It's unfair to everyone involved. But this also, I think, maybe leads us to some philosophical points. What do you guys think?
Well, yeah, for me, I think we're going to see a lot more of this as the divide continues to widen between those who are able to go and drop a ton of money at a mall and those who are not, or likely will never be able to do that in, within any short-term future. And, we are, as a society, as a culture, just through popular culture, we are doing that to ourselves. We think about the television shows, the movies, everything, not everything, but most things that exist for consumption that are very popular, involve clothing like this, involve watches and other just material things that exist on characters and are part of a character. Even in reality TV shows, it's like the thing to have if you're going to have status. And if you cannot achieve those things or get those things by normal means, then why not resort to something like this?
Yeah, I mean, all these things are like signifiers of this class and status and this, that, as those, two poles become farther and farther apart. It becomes kind of a stand-in for a widening discontentedness. I mean, I think it's deeper than just wanting the stuff. It's a way of like lashing out. I mean, to me, these are the kind of signifiers of what you might see in the climate leading to an uprising. Like where people are truly unhappy and they're seeing this divide between the super rich and even just the middle class, and let alone if you're actually, quite poor or disenfranchised in some way, or you've lost your job and never gotten back on your feet after the pandemic, and all the while others are just raking it in, and kind of maybe not intending to, but rubbing it in your face in many ways. I understand where that it's a form of kind of hurt, I mean, I really do. I think we all see it, even if we're very lucky to have the jobs that we have. There is this American ideal of kind of always wanting more and always wanting the next thing and not ever having enough be enough. And that's a product of the narratives we're fed with reality TV, like you're saying, Matt, and now more so with social media and just seeing everyone oversharing, especially celebrity types and folks with like just way too much money. And you start to be like, well, I deserve that. I should have that. Why shouldn't I have that?
Yeah.
Then I think for some it causes them to lash out.
Sure, yeah. Like I was saying earlier, I can't remember why I was saying this, but it's the coupons, baby. Who has the most coupons? How many coupons can you get before you die? Yeah. How many coupons? Let me get the name brand thing. Whatever. You guys are making really good points, and I would like to end with a message, with a twofold message. First, to the folks who hear about stories like this and agree with our prediction that these will only continue in the future, I would want to caution you from being misled by bad actors in mainstream media. This is red meat for folks who want to delegitimize various protests, and many protests have occurred over this time. When you hear about looting during like a Black Lives Matter rally or something, you have to ask yourself, were those actually conscientious protesters who suddenly decided to break in someplace for a scarf, or was this organized crime seeing a tremendous opportunity? I advance to you that it was the latter much more often than the former. And then
Ben, I couldn't agree with you more. I recently had a private DM chat with a listener who I posted something, a political opinion about the Kyle Rittenhouse outcome, and somebody had a bit of a knee-jerk reaction to that and said, "Oh, all these Black Lives Matter protesters are just a bunch of opportunists and this, that, and the other." And it disgusts me where I live. I just see them like literally, moving in on Targets and all of these shopping centers and just literally, disrupting people's lives and commerce and just throwing bricks through windows and stealing stuff. And I made the point to this individual that I think for the most part, there may be some issues in leadership with BLM at times, but I think for the most part, he's talking about how they were paid. And I'm like, well, what is more likely, that they were paid by Black Lives Matter or by the opposition in an effort to just, to delegitimize that movement and call attention to the bad actors who are maybe not even part of the movement at all?
Yeah, so my second point, and this is the message that we need to end on. We're going long, and I want to thank everybody listening for your patience, because what I'm about to say is mission critical here. In many ways, if you're involved with these things, if you are an opportunist, I know how exciting it can be for any number of rationalizations. Say, hey, we're fighting the power. We're fighting these big evil corporations. We're fighting inequality. We're taking stuff back. But the people who are going to end up bearing the brunt of these actions, the consequences, it goes way deeper than the 3 people who got popped out of 50 to 80 or whatever. What you will be doing results in red meat for the same organizations that you are attempting to fight against. It galvanizes them. It feeds them. It empowers them. It gives them the wherewithal, the casus belli, to further oppress people, to do worse things to people who have nothing to do with you, that you will never meet, just regular people. And ask yourself, if it feels exciting to skirt on the wrong side of the law. I think everybody's done that a time or two. How would you feel if you had to look in the face of the next person who is an elderly lady who dies because there was a kick door at the wrong address? How would you feel about that? Does the sweater still feel good? Do you like walking around in the boots? How's that PlayStation? Does it play the same? We're going to leave it there. A pause for word from the sponsor. We'll be back with more strange news.